You're live.
Seven PM, time to call the August 16th, 2021 Advisory Plan Commission meeting to order. Will staff please note the presence of a quorum?
Ms. Berkman?
Here.
Mr. Deck?
Here.
Mr. Horkay?
Here.
Mr. Johns?
Here.
Dr. Kelleher?
Here.
Mr. Maui?
Here.
Mr. McCarty?
Here.
Mr. Schmitz?
Here.
Ms. Boljerick?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First item of business will be approval of the August 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve these minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Victor McCarty. Is there a second?
I will second. This is Kelleher.
Dr. Kelleher seconds. Thank you. Staff, please call the roll.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes.
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljerick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Will staff please review the rules of procedures for tonight's meeting?
Yes, no items on the agenda tonight have a public hearing. So for all petitions, tonight's meeting will have the following structure. The department will summarize the petition and describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken by the Plan Commission. The petitioner will then be given up to 15 minutes to present to the Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission will call upon each member, the President of the Commission will call upon each member to provide comments or questions regarding the petition. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to the comments, and the Plan Commission will take action on the petition. A few comments for our APC members and petitioners this evening. Please have your email accessible during the meeting so you can read new comments if they were to come in, though there are no public hearings. Please mute your microphone when you are not speaking, and if you do come up to the podium to speak, please turn the microphone on. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to no public hearings, we have no consent agenda items. So we move into the items of business. Item first is Lancaster 2, petition 2108-ODP-19 and 2108-SPP-19.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Commission. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department, speaking on behalf of Corey Meyer this evening. Before you, for your consideration, you have a primary plat and overall development plan for 90 lots on approximately 36 acres in the Lancaster Phase 2 PUD District. This site is located at the northeast corner of 186th Street and Casey Road and includes the entirety of the Lancaster Phase 2 PUD District, which was adopted on March 8th of this year. This item received a public hearing at your August 2nd meeting, and the plans are now fully compliant and eligible for your approval. I do have petitioners on the call: Jesse Pullman, Tim Moulter, and Kyle Eichhorn. They do not plan to present but are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Since there is no petitioner presentation, I'll poll the commission to see if there are any questions or comments tonight. Take it right from the top alphabetically with Kristen Berkman.
None, thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Matt Deck.
No comments.
Thank you. Mike Johns.
No questions, no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui.
I have none, thanks.
Very good. Victor McCarty.
None for me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Dave Schmitz.
No questions, no comments. Thanks.
Cindy Spoljaric.
I just want to say I appreciate the attempts to kind of naturalize these ponds, so thank you.
Very good. I too made note of that at the agenda meeting back on Wednesday. No other comments, so this is here for our approval. Is there a motion to take action on this?
I'll make a motion to approve 2108-ODP-19 and 2108-SPP-19 Lancaster 2.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I can second it.
Thank you. We have a motion from Andre Maui, second from Kristen Berkman. Will staff please call the roll?
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes,
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Boljaric?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Our other item of business is Midland South, 2108-ODP-20 and 2108-SPP-20. This is here for approval, and there is also a variance request that we need to act on prior to acting on the petition itself.
Thank you, members of the commission. For the record, Rachel Remenschneider with the Community Development Department. This proposal is for the overall development plan and primary plat of one lot on approximately 3.37 acres in the Midland South PUD. This project is located at the northwest corner of Roosevelt Street and Cherry Street. This project received a public hearing at the August 2nd APC meeting. They are requesting a waiver of the UDO Article 8.7C2, which requires sidewalks on both sides of all internal streets. The plans show sidewalk on only one side of the internal street. If this waiver is approved tonight, the project is fully compliant with all applicable standards. As such, it is ready for approval this evening. Justin Moffett of Old Town is here and will present tonight. He's available for questions, as am I, if there are any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Justin?
Good evening, Justin Moffett with Old Town. I wanted, if you could scroll down on the screen and zoom in maybe to that corner with all the spaghetti bowl there. In our last meeting, there was maybe a single issue raised about right-of-way width along Roosevelt. There was a neighbor who had raised a concern. Ultimately, our proposed plat has provided the required right-of-way. However, we want to be good neighbors and make sure it works for the city. We had some conversation in the last few days with city engineer to kind of finalize this based on data we were able to gather. So city engineer ultimately needs to do more study on what their final design is going to be for that stretch of right-of-way. But we are in agreement that if they want to completely avoid the neighbor to the south, and he's got a little retaining wall along the road, we could shift our right-of-way design north a little without impacting any of our sidewalks or tree lawns. It would actually just reduce our side yard setback on that building on the corner a bit, and then we could provide the full right-of-way profile without touching the neighbor's property. So city engineers still determine if that's necessary or not, but this exhibit shows that that's possible, and we can bend the right-of-way back to be in line as we move west. So per the PUD ordinance, we're in full compliance with what we've already presented, but we have shown a solution with how we can be a good neighbor to the south if the city engineer wants to adjust his right-of-way design. But we're requesting approval tonight based on what's been presented, knowing that we could give up another 2 feet or so if necessary. And pertaining to the waiver on the sidewalk, our designs throughout the entire process with APC showed sidewalks just on one side of the road. This is a unique, site plan. It's a little different than a lot of traditional suburban development in that we have effectively rear load garages on alleys. The front doors face out to the public rights of way. And so we really only have one condition where that it is really even relevant. But again, each building type has a sidewalk out its front door to the public right of way. Glad to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go through commission comments first, and then we'll speak specifically on the need for the sidewalk decision. We'll go through commissioner comments, starting with Matt Deck.
It just sounds like you're addressing the citizen's concern, which I'm sure is appreciated, and the city engineer has approved the variance, so I think everything looks good. I don't have any other comments or questions.
Thank you. Mike Johns?
I'd also like to thank you for meeting with a citizen across the street and trying to reach an agreement that'll enable him to maintain his retaining wall that he built. So, thank you, appreciate it. That's all my comments.
Thank you. Dr. Kelleher?
I'll just say that I thank you very much, Justin, for working with the neighbor. I know it's only one person, but it is their home, so you paid special attention to them, and I appreciate that. And as far as the waiver goes, because it's all internal, I really don't have an issue with that either. Thank you.
Thank you. Andre Maui, any questions or comments?
No questions or comments that haven't already been stated.
Thank you. Victor McCarty?
Just thank you for being a good neighbor. Thank you.
Dave Schmitz?
Nothing additional, thanks.
Cindy Spoljarek?
None, thanks.
Thank you. Kristen Berkman?
I'll just echo, thank you for working with the neighbor, and I have no issues with the variance.
Okay, thank you. So before we can act on the petition tonight, we need to approve the waiver request. Is there a motion to approve this waiver request? To allow sidewalks only on one side. The specific language is contained in the staff report. If there's a need to take a look at it, on page 8 of 10 and 9 of 10, it shows the request and what the ordinance language includes. So what we're looking to do is waive compliance with Article 8.7C2 sidewalk standards. I heard a couple of folks indicate they had no issue with it. I do not have any problem with this as well.
I'll make a motion to
This is
approve the
Keller.
waiver.
Were you going to
Go
make a
ahead, go
motion,
ahead.
Jenny?
Now I'll let Matt do it.
Okay, very good. Matt?
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver.
Thank you. And Dr. Keller, I assume you can then be the second?
I will second. Thank you.
Excellent. Will staff please call the roll?
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes?
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes,
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljarek?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes,
Motion carries.
Very good. Now we can go ahead and proceed with the petition itself. With the variance approved, we are looking for a motion now to approve Midland South. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve 2108-ODP-20 and 2108-SBP-20 Midland South.
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion from Victor McCarty and a second from Andre Maui. Will staff please call the roll on this?
Mr. Horke?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes?
Dr. Kelleher?
yes,
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljarek?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
yes,
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good.
Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you. Go build. That completes our business for this evening. There's no public hearings and all other agenda items are continued. So that brings us down to commissioner comments. Kristen, I know you have something.
yes, I do. Thanks, Bob. Thank you, staff, for running copies of this comprehensive plan information. I know we had talked about staff taking everyone through the different comp plans regarding the downtown. And so I just went ahead and kind of took a stab at this and have gone through the 2007 comprehensive plan, the 2009 addendum, 2013 and 2016 addendums, and called out some different areas that are called out in the plans, and then went through and summarized. And I honestly focused on the Grand Junction Plaza block, which encompasses the land pretty much all around the Grand Junction Plaza, and then the Park Street corridor, which is, of course, the Park Street restaurants and homes there. And I went through and just summarized what the plans say, which gives everybody a picture of how this has evolved over time. And then out to the right, I have posed some questions that I think could use further investigation to define. And so I'm wondering if everybody would be in agreement that we could, or you all could take this packet and review it and see if you all also have any questions after reviewing the data on these different items. And also staff, if I've missed something going through these different addendums. There's things in different places at times, but I tried pretty hard to go to all those different places to fill this in. And then at the next meeting, if we could have some discussion as a plan commission, if we feel it's important to move forward in some way of trying to get these questions answered, whether that is getting some outside consultant help, or if staff wants to say if they have time to do it, however that procedure could happen, but at least come to some agreement that we feel like these questions merit answers for us to do our jobs effectively as a plan commission. Does anyone have any thoughts? I mean, I think specifically that I found some pretty major needs in the streetscape where there's some lists and ideas, but we haven't really come back and said, how do we really want to do this? You know, what are the light poles? What are the benches? How do we want to do kind of the historical arts aspect of the downtown? And I think that the development community also has some input on some things that would help them as well. So if other commissioners have comments, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for distributing this. I was not on a big screen in between when I got it earlier, and I wasn't going to try to read this on a
No problem.
smartphone. So I haven't looked it over real closely, but I will do so. I hope everybody else will do so as well. So I'm not sure if I have any further comments now, but our next meeting is 3 weeks. It's going to be on Tuesday after Labor Day. And that may or may not be a good meeting to do this because that'll be our public hearing meeting, and there's a lot of continued items. So depending upon how many of those are agenda items for September 8th, this may be better material for our second meeting in September, but one of the next two certainly should be viable.
Do we think there's enough information tonight to try to start exploring it then? Enough questions, or, because that pushes us back yet another month? And I think the first discussion on this was in May, so we're 4 months at this point. I'm just concerned because we have this open petition with Old Town, so some of these things are really needing some direction, and we just kind of, I don't know, keep delaying. I don't know if anybody else has comments.
Justin already left. He might have had something to help us with his anticipated schedule, but I'm not sure if this waits till the second meeting in September for better dialogue amongst us, that's probably going to be a problem for him. I would think he's got enough things on his to-do list that whether it's 3 weeks from now or 5 weeks from now, it's probably going to not make a lot of difference to him.
Bob,
Go ahead, Ginny.
it's Jenny. I want to thank Kristen, first of all, for doing all that work and going through all of those different addendums to the comp plan and making a chart for us. I haven't had a chance to review it, obviously, either, but I will definitely do that, and I want to thank her for doing all that work. One thing I do want to say is I know that Justin has been persistent in trying to get his things done. I don't know how many other petitioners would be as persistent. He's gone back to the drawing board several times, been asked to have more public comment, and that's a lot of work for a developer, and I think it may discourage some from coming to our community. So I think it would be very important for us to give a better idea of what we want, so that when somebody comes in, they have some kind of structure and aren't being bounced back and forth from the APC to the council to possibly the mayor and everybody having a different opinion. I think that discourages quality development. I know that there are some things in the comp plan and some of those addendums that address some ideas on small town and having public art. And I think by the September meeting, assuming that we don't have a huge, list of petitions, I think we ought to try to be ready to discuss it then. If we have a huge agenda, then, it may need to be pushed off, but let's just, if we haven't got anything else to do for the next 2 weeks, or 3 weeks actually, as far as Plan Commission goes, I think it would behoove us to all look at this and try to get some ideas down, whether we bring those forth at our next meeting or the one after. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not necessarily saying I'm trying to suggest we have to wait 5 weeks, and we do have 3 weeks in between now and the next meeting to collectively pool our thoughts, share them with Kristen perhaps, so that you may be able to update this and have something for us. But I do think we need to remain open to the possibility that we could have quite a few public hearings at the next meeting, and that would not be a good meeting to then do something like this. But the second meeting of September, with or without some public hearing rolling over, I'm sure will be a quick enough meeting that we can tackle this by then for sure.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Bob. I mean, we don't want to have a, 5-hour meeting, but I think we ought to, since we have 3 weeks now with nothing else on our agendas for APC, this would be a worthwhile time to at least try to prepare. And I'm also extremely interested in staff's comments. I think Kristen did a nice job, but if there are gaps or, omissions, I would certainly be interested in what Kevin and Pam, and especially Kevin and Pam, since they've been here the longest, had to say about that.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments?
Can I add just one thing, and this is more of a subset in here about the historic building and planning bit, because our National Register listing wasn't done at the time, I think, that was part of any of these. And also, we are looking at a historic, what would you call the commission?
Preservation.
Preservation Commission, and that was part of the whole 32 deal, and one of the recommendations, going through that process. And so we are planning to do that. And we do have a lot of information stuff, it's just not directly in here. But that's going to be handled separately, if you will, with the commission. I'm sure we will also be playing a role in that, as our plan commission, but that's being worked on. So I just wanted to let people know that there is something there.
I think ultimately that would come into whatever document. If we decide to do some type of document that adds detail, that would come in, because it would be important
Yes,
to know.
very much so.
Yep, okay, great, thank you. And Bob, to your point, I'm more than happy to gather and get all this put together. So if commissioners could email your thoughts ahead of time, then I'll get it all combined into one document so everybody can see everyone's input.
And send it direct to Kristen, because
That's
we
fine.
still seem to be having the @apc.westfield.in.gov email distribution list having problems. Not everybody, myself included in particular, is getting things from the group email. So it doesn't really, if you want to send it to that, just make sure though it also specifically does go to Kristen when you might share your comments, just in case that group has not been fixed yet by IT.
So that gets into, I had a few questions kind of procedurally about this. And first of all, Kristen, thank you. I think the hardest thing for an endeavor like this sometimes is getting started, and you just accomplished that. You nudged us off the start line, so appreciate that effort. I know it's not an easy task. What is the end, like Kristen, you mentioned, if we choose to put together some document, would this be like the 2021 addendum? And if so, what's the process? And I was asking that in the context of, if we work on this asynchronously and we're all exchanging emails back and forth, at what point, how far are we allowed to do that before we have to start doing that here? I guess I don't understand enough about an addendum process to know how that works procedurally.
Staff or council can jump in whenever you
if
might
this was
see fit, but
If this was a private business endeavor during my daytime hours, I'd say, great, everybody email Kristen. I think you're taking the ball and running with it, and that's wonderful. It's a little different here, and I want to make sure we're doing it right.
well, the way I'm looking at this is happening is we're sharing our thoughts with kind of the unofficial spearhead of all of this, but it will return and have dialogue at one of the next 2 subsequent meetings. Whatever the output ultimately becomes, whether it's a few weeks after that or a few months after that or whatever the time frame may be, it will have a public hearing and it has to be acted upon in here. So I'm not feeling like we're crossing any kind of bound here yet by sharing thoughts individually or collectively, whatever system works for right now. But staff or council, if you have a different opinion, jump right in. If you don't, well, I think Matt had a microphone turned on, so he may or may not have a comment. Matt's turned his microphone off, so Matt does apparently not have a comment.
Isn't the effort right now to basically establish that there is a need to provide some sort of an update or some sort of a document that would provide guidance to the development community and to the builders in the area? At this stage, it's basically just establishing that there is a need, and then we take whatever the appropriate step is. I don't know if that's spearheaded by this body or whether it's by the council, but we move forward once we all come to a consensus that yes, we should do this, or no, we should not. Isn't that what we're doing now through Kristen's efforts?
Yes, that's how I would see it,
Okay.
is do we collectively, as a body, I think it would be a motion that we would say we need to do some type of addendum, additional addendum to the comprehensive plan, and then I believe that goes to council for a vote and a recommendation from them as well. And I'm just remembering that from our APC training.
Okay, thanks. That
Does
makes,
everybody else agree with procedurally? Pam?
Once a comp plan amendment is submitted, then it would go through the public process. But right now, it seems like we're just talking about, for one, determining if one is even necessary
Right.
and/or what form it would take. Things like that, which depending on the process, sometimes that is done in more of a public forum through steering committees and things like that. Other times it can be done more internally. But as of right now, there is no submitted project that you're talking about, either submitted internally or externally.
Does it need to be an addendum, or could it be more of a guidebook? I mean, depending on what comes out of this, but more just to say that this is kind of handbook of what we expect. Does that need to be an addendum?
I was viewing that as something that's all part of the yet-to-be-determined collection of information. How far does it rise to the need of an addendum, or is it something that is clarifications and a guidebook or whatever term you want to apply to something that would be a parallel, helpful document, but not necessarily a formal part of the comp plan? We'll figure that out as we go along.
A lot of these
Yeah.
items were in the implementation plan in 2013 to be accomplished, and I know Cindy, you've talked about that, so I don't know if Pam can add some clarification on that. When something says it's in an implementation plan, how that happens.
How the implementation plan happens. So when the first Grand Junction plan was adopted, it discussed the 5 different sub-areas, and then two of those sub-areas have been further studied in their own implementation plan. So the original implementation plan had kind of more general guidelines for each 5 sections, with the idea that, each of those sections would be further studied individually, which has been done for the Gateway and the Junction Subdistrict. But the Kendall and the Neighborhood Subdistrict and the Union Street Corridor have not been further studied. So that generally in our process, the way our department's mind has thought about it in the past, the next step would be doing a different one of those groups, those areas, either probably Union Street being the most needed. At least that was discussed previously at the task group a couple years ago. But that would be the kind of logical next step in our mind, or where we had seen it going in the past. But obviously, if you guys have different ideas, we'll look at it.
Any other thoughts from folks to my left? Am I right again?
I guess I'll just chime in to kind of help me visualize what we're trying to accomplish a little bit. Kind of alluding to what Cindy mentioned a little bit, is what we're trying to create, don't want to use the word catalog, but design packet to provide to developers of saying, hey, this is what we want. Go in, pick and choose, make sure this is in when you're presenting your project. Is that correct?
This is Jenny. That's what I see, Victor. In fact, I know that when Justin had some of his charrettes, he had whiteboards with pictures of different types of buildings from different communities, and people kind of voted on those, put, green stickers on the ones they liked, red stickers on the ones they didn't. So that kind of input, I think, is what we're looking for. We don't want to dictate a specific design, but I think to have some kind of a design manual or an architectural manual to give examples of what we're looking for would be helpful, not just to the APC and the council in making decisions, but to the development community as well.
And I think that also help us define our districts between what we're trying to do on Park Street versus Union Street, a historic district, the Grand Junction Plaza district, so on and so forth. So, no, I agree with that kind of implementation of, that way we have a visualization of what we can expect when projects are coming forth, so.
I'm in favor of doing this to kind of close out my earlier question, just trying to make sure that we're doing it all correctly and understanding it. So I appreciate that we can correspond on this and then kind of see where it leads and determine what documentation that might turn into later. So that's great. I think as we do this, something that we need to be cautious about, if we provide visualization examples, and again, I'm not opposed to doing it, just a caution here, that can actually limit creative solutions. Somebody can really focus in and lock in like, okay, that's exactly what we want, which I don't think any of us mean it that way. So just something that we'll have to be very cognizant of as we put this together.
Totally agree.
Especially when it comes to the Jersey Street extension, we don't know how that's gonna look yet, so we don't wanna restrict ourselves and how the future may be.
It's always that challenge of, enforcement's not the right word, but how literal is it and how suggestive is it? And that's just something we need to respect, the way that it could be interpreted, right, wrong, or otherwise by each petitioner, and how we mean these user notes, if that's what we end up creating, to be applied.
But kind of guiding on a theme, I think, is also important. And a lot of times when these developers come in, they're looking at us saying, it's basically, they don't really use the term theme, but you can tell that's what they're asking for. What's your theme here? What are you trying to achieve in a theme? And sometimes I feel like we just don't have anything to offer in that regard.
Right.
Maybe
And
that's
remember,
just me, but I don't feel
No,
like we're clear in that.
yeah, I agree with you, Cindy. If I were a developer coming in, I would want somebody to tell me what kind of a theme are you looking for? And I think that's what Justin has been trying to do. And that's helpful to somebody to not, and remember that these will all come in as PUDs. So this isn't an architectural requirement, it's an idea. And as a PUD, they can vary from that as much or as little as they want to. But at least it gives them some kind of a starting point on, what we're kind of looking for.
And I'd very much so agree that we don't know what our theming is right now. You could go to a lake town, you can go to just nearby Carmel, Noblesville, Fishers, et cetera. It seems like they all have their type of theming, you know what to expect. So we need to establish what we can find to expect in the certain districts that we want to establish, so.
A lot of our prior discussions have more focused on quality than trying to suggest or actually craft a theme. That we want something that blends well, and we want it to all be with great materials and highly detailed designs. But we've resisted the urge to specify, here is our theme, such as some of the communities that you suggest they were more focused, it appeared, on having something like that. We were kind of focused on not having that, but trying to have a similar quality. So that makes it a lot tougher.
I think it mentions in all those plans, it's the second one down on the table, but the first one had a little bit of a theme, but the other ones all just kind of say, we need to develop a brand or a theme. I don't think we've done it yet, so.
All right.
An area to explore.
So we have several weeks. Kristen will be the recipient to put all this together and distribute ahead of the next meeting, if we're going to be able to have an opportunity to talk about it then. We'll get an idea when the agenda starts to be settled the Wednesday before that meeting on how the time availability is going to look.
Can
Bob, I know you've
Kristen
looked,
send-
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jenny.
Oh, I don't think, we don't have each other's personal emails, or not all of them. So if we want to send these to Kristen, can we somehow find out what that email would be?
Pam, can you send, I don't really want to say
Yeah,
it
we
on-
can email it out, and from my understanding, it seems that the trouble with the ABC email address only occurs when it comes from outside City of Westfield, so if any staff member emails that email address, you guys should all get it. So anytime we get public comments, obviously until this is fixed, we're gonna forward them on, even if you were copied on them originally, so you might receive some duplication of public comments coming in over the next few weeks, but, someone from our department will email out, your emails, assuming you all don't mind each of you having each other's emails, we can email out that list to all of you. So,
Not at all. For me, anyway. I think I've collected everybody's already anyway, but, so I like to save information.
Just a friendly reminder, that would make your personal emails subject to public access laws.
That it would.
So don't put anything in them you don't want the public to read.
Think before you write. So, all right. We have,
Can we get a timeline on getting that resolved, Pam, this whole email thing? Because, I mean, I think we're like month 4 at least on that.
yeah, we can try to find out from our IT department.
Okay, thank you. Because I would have sent, I would have sent this, but I knew I couldn't.
I've nudged Christopher, I've nudged Kevin
So-
on multiple occasions. It just seems to be too many lines of code to go through to figure out what little speck of information is a 0 instead of a 1, or the other way around, or whatever it is. So, all right. City Council liaison?
I have a report from our last meeting. We did meet August 9th. Had an update from Parks and Public Works about the trail intersections and line of sight issues, specifically with greenery, as well as the Hawk system for 161st and Monon. We are waiting for a part. It's a push button, I believe, for
It's a push button, but they actually started to installation this past week.
yes, so
So,
it's
something's going on there.
underway, and we're already getting a lot of communication about that. But it should be done in September. We should have that part. Our citywide audit that the mayor started, that effort should be completed and the report ready by the middle of September. The Mule Barn Road Commercial PUD that we heard here was approved. We had an introduction on a resolution to approve the issuance of the library bonds, and that public hearing is August 23rd. If you recall, we've had discussions here about the library. Also introduced the annexation ordinance for Bonterra and an ordinance amending the Parks and Trails rules and procedures. That's it.
Thank you. We did have a BZA meeting in between our last meeting and now, so do we have an update
We
on that?
did. Yeah, I can tell you what happened at that meeting. There's a special exception for the Next Gear Auto Sales, which is on 32, south side of 32, across from Willow Creek subdivision. They have operated under a special exception to permitting their business for the last 3 years, and we extended that, granted that special exception for an additional 3 years. There was a pool location, actually the deck and structure around a pool. They needed a setback variance in Viking Meadows. That was approved. There's a Fremont Moore subdivision located at Fremont Moore Road and 206th Street, frontage variance, a 3-lot subdivision. And 2 of the 3 lots were very close in frontage to AGSF 1 requirements, but 1 was not. Large lots, all AGSF 1 compliant, but they did need some relief to the frontage requirement. That was granted. There was another frontage variance for about 35 feet on a property at 193rd and Lamong that was granted. There was a property at 171st and Town Road that was an illegal non-conforming use as it sits now, because a prior owner had conveyed some property, a strip of property to a adjoining owner, which created the problem. It's a relatively small lot, 1.4 acres in AGS F1. And basically we were asked to approve standards variances to get them back in compliance because of what had been done by the prior owner. So we basically are just permitting what's there. It also allowed him to build some improvement, maybe an outbuilding. I forget what he was trying to do, but basically the variances were just permitting what he has existing in terms of setbacks. Finally, the school system, Westfield Schools sought a variance standard on a height restriction for accessory buildings because if you know, on the Monon Trail Elementary has a baseball field and softball field south of it. And the fourplex of softball fields, they're building a concession stand and a press box building, same type of building as what's at Grand Park. And they're putting those in between those softball diamonds, which has been badly needed out there for years. So the schools got that approval to do that. And that is it.
Very good. Thank you. Anything from the Community Development Department?
So the only thing we really have, if you didn't notice, there is one item that had been continued that has officially been withdrawn, listed at the bottom under withdrawn petitions, since it was done between the last meeting and tonight's meeting. That's the Winterberg PUD. But that's all for us. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. We've reached the end. Is there a motion to adjourn? We have a motion from Dave Schmitz, and do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Cindy Spoljarek. Will staff please call the roll?
Dr. Kelleher?
Yes?
Mr. Maui?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Ms. Spoljarek?
Yes.
Ms. Berkman?
Yes.
Mr. Deck?
Yes.
Mr. Horkay?
Yes.
Mr. Johns?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 7:42.